My greetings. As you know, we already had a meeting with the Secretary General, and we are now getting ready for the NATO Council. And as you know, this is the third case when the meeting like this, such an important meeting, is taking place in Georgia. And again, this proves the coherence and much attention that NATO member states are paying to Georgia. And in Georgia itself takes steps coherently and aspires to become the dignified member of this alliance in the shortest period of time. We had very interesting talks with Mr. Secretary General, and let me thank him for such a wonderful conversation. And we discussed the previous stages, and we also spoke about the future, about how the future relations should take place. And from our side, personally me, recently, well, as for the past, I emphasized that after the elections of 2012, which was the first event in the history of our country to change the government through the elections, after that, our activities are coherent, and we are developing democratic institutions, which is necessary for the NATO membership of Georgia. And we have assured, personally me, I have emphasized that it will be much better, the presidential elections will be even better and more democratic that we will have in the fall, and this will be the final stage and for the NATO member states and for the European Union and for the international community to see and to be sure what the real image of the new government is. And let me again assure you that this will make it easier for us to advance on our way to the aspiration and NATO membership. We also discussed the relations with Russia and the successful steps that we had in regards to the trade. We really welcome these steps. However, at the same time, we have some concerns about the events that lasted recently, and in regards to the boundaries where the wire fences have been now moved inside, and I cannot really explain even today, and I really expressed my uncertainty with the Secretary General about this issue, because it is unclear, it is not understandable when we have on one hand such progressive steps, but on the other hand we have other steps taken by Russia, which is not compatible with this context, and that it does not really create any additional advantages for Russia. On the contrary, it generates many questions for Russia. And I have assured Mr. Secretary General that we, the new government, we will follow our principles and we will be coherent in regard to the relations with Russia, and we will do everything in order to settle our relations with our northern neighbor and to have it done it smoothly so that it does not create any kind of barriers for our integration in NATO, into NATO. These are the topics that we discussed. And after 2014, the Georgian soldiers will continue their operations in Afghanistan. And once again, let me again remember and pay my respects to the soldiers who died there. And during a month, 10 of our soldiers died while participating in peaceful operations in Afghanistan. We are very proud of them, and we highly appreciate and respect them, and we are very proud that we have such heroes. After 2014, the participation, and actually Georgia will participate in the process of withdrawal of troops, and you know we are also accelerating the process of finalizing the railway, and Georgia will be actively participating in all the processes. And these are the topics that we have discussed, and we will have other interesting meetings, and we will inform and update you about the result and outcomes of these meetings.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for your kind invitation to visit Georgia. It's always a great pleasure to be here. And the Prime Minister and I have just had a very positive and very fruitful meeting. We've had a very good discussion on NATO-Georgia relations, and in a few minutes we will be meeting in the framework of the NATO-Georgia Commission. We discussed our mission in Afghanistan, where we have just marked a major milestone. Afghan troops and police are taking the lead for security nationwide. By the end of next year, Afghan security will be fully in Afghan hands, and our ISAF combat mission will be completed. We are now planning a different mission to train, advise and assist Afghan forces after 2014. This will not be a combat mission, and I thank Georgia for its continued commitment to our joint endeavor. I know Georgia has suffered tragic losses, especially in recent weeks. My thoughts are with the families and loved ones of those who lost their lives, and I wish a swift recovery to those who have been injured. We honor their service and their sacrifice. Your soldiers are not in Afghanistan to gain Georgia's entry into NATO. In Afghanistan, Georgian troops carry out a United Nations mandate as part of a coalition of 50 nations, the biggest coalition in recent history. And they are there to serve Georgia's security interests, because by depriving terrorists of a safe haven, we are also making our own countries more secure. Prime Minister, since you took office, your government has shown a clear commitment to reforms and to Georgia's Euro-Atlantic aspirations. For our part, we stand by our commitments. We decided at the Bucharest summit in 2008 that Georgia will become a NATO member, provided you meet the necessary requirements. That decision has not changed. That decision still stands. We are working together with you to reform Georgia's security forces, making them even more professional and more accountable, so they are better able to meet any threats facing your country. Georgia has already made remarkable reforms in many areas. The priority now is to continue implementing reforms and to demonstrate that democracy is deep-rooted. That means respect for human rights, including the rights of minorities. The violence we saw on the streets of Tbilisi last month, on the 17th of May, has no place in democratic societies. The right to gather peacefully and to freely express one's opinion is fundamental to democracy. And for this reason, I commend you, Prime Minister, for your powerful Independence Day address, where you strongly reaffirmed the importance of these values. To demonstrate that democracy is deep-rooted means also making political cohabitation work, showing a clear commitment to the rule of law, and ensuring that the presidential elections this year meet the very highest standards. This is vital for Georgia's democracy. It is vital for Georgia's international credibility, and I can assure you that NATO will continue to stand with you on this road.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we don't have much time, and maybe we can take two questions.
First will be Georgian public broadcaster, and then Reuters. Thank you.
Public broadcaster Leon Kvatashidze, while speaking about NATO, the Prime Minister said, when speaking about NATO, the Prime Minister said that the future summit is important for the government in order to start a new stage and to get a membership action plan. What is your vision about this process, and how important is it for Georgia, and how can Georgia start a new stage, and what's the general disposition within NATO? And let me ask the Prime Minister as well. As you know, for Russia, it is unacceptable to broaden the NATO borders in the south. And on this background, maybe shortly.
Okay.
As for the first question, when we had an event at Rustaveli Theatre, I emphasized this issue, but as for our membership action plan, MAP, we don't really raise issues like this way. So we will wait for the NATO member states, and then we will see what real steps can be taken towards Georgia, what can be realistic, and we will emphasize on these things only. And today we have already discussed this, and because this is not something which is related to the principal issues, and well, MAP is not very important, I mean, of vital importance for guaranteeing the NATO membership, and there will be the discussions about that, and correspondingly we will have progress, and Mr. Secretary General already spoke about it today, and he emphasized this issue, but we should not be limited to the terms only, and we should not emphasize the terms only, and just the terminology. We will see what happens in the future, and we will see what the progress we have in the future. As for a second question, I think as for the progress, the Secretary General will answer to you, but MAP will not be the only element. There should be other progress as well. As for Russia, that Russia is not happy about it and will not be happy even tomorrow. The main thing is that the Georgian people are happy about that, and we are accountable to the Georgian people, and this is not my decision or the decision of the previous government. No, this is the decision of the Georgian people, Europe and North Atlantic Alliance, and we will continue our aspiration. This is up to the Georgian nation, this is up to the NATO member states. Of course, other neighbors or Russia maybe they are not satisfied with that, but actually it does not really affect the interest of Russia.
First of all, let me stress that while we will have a summit in 2014, we have not yet decided on the agenda. So we haven't decided how the open door policy will be addressed at the summit in 2014. Secondly, I would like to stress that actually Georgia has chosen her own path towards what we decided in Bucharest in 2008, and that is a NATO-Georgia Commission, which is something very special. As you may know, only Georgia and Ukraine have special commissions, and actually we established the NATO-Georgia Commission in 2008 to follow up on what we decided at the Bucharest summit earlier in 2008. And that decision was, as I mentioned, that Georgia will become a member of NATO, provided, of course, Georgia fulfills the necessary requirements. So within the NATO-Georgia Commission, we cooperate to achieve the goal we set at the NATO summit in 2008. So that's also what the Prime Minister and I agreed today, that we will now focus on those concrete steps towards fulfilling the necessary requirements. And in that respect, Georgia has actually made a lot of progress, and I'm sure that in collaboration we will achieve further progress. And finally, NATO remains open. We have stated that on several occasions, and we also did so 1 year ago at the NATO summit in Chicago. It remains open to countries that fulfill the necessary criteria.
Thank you. Last question from Reuters.
Thank you. Reuters News Agency Caucasus Bureau. Mr. Secretary General, you have talked a lot about requirements Georgia should fulfill to become NATO member. I'm really sorry, my question is again about this issue. Do you think our country is now closer to a North Atlantic alliance? Because it seems that Georgia is making step forward and probably step back by some perception, democratic elections, but at the same time, well, some rallies in the street which are not perceived as a democratic in a European society, right? So are we closer to NATO? And I would like you to be straight comment, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I will be straight, frank, open, and say, when I look at the development in Georgia since I visited Georgia first time some years ago as then Prime Minister of Denmark, then we have seen clear progress, and during that period of time, obviously Georgia has moved closer to NATO because Georgia has implemented certain reforms, and Georgia continues to implement necessary reforms. Having said that, there's still work to do. The Georgian government knows that, we know that, and in collaboration we will work and carry through necessary reforms. So yes, Georgia is closer, but there's still work to do.
Closer. ალბათ შემდგომ მოახერხ. თუ კიდევ კითხვა გინდათ? მე მგონი რომ კარგი პასუხი გასცა. თქვენ გინდათ კონკრეტულად რომ ახალი ხელისუფლების მოთვის შემდგომ არის თუ არა ახლოს თქვათ. მე ვფიქრობ რომ გენერალური მდივანი აერიდა მას, მე ვფიქრობ რომ ზუსტად ეს
General somehow bypassed this issue, but actually the general and overall disposition is that we will have the progress, and we already had the progress because we had democratic elections and we handed over, we changed the government through democratic ways, and the next elections will be even more democratic events, and 8 or 9 months is very difficult. Also, we are in the mode of cohabitation, and we have the president from the previous government. Our president is now in opposition, and the person like Secretary General, they really avoid to draw a very rigid line in this respect. But actually, the thing was that we are closer and we will necessarily become the NATO member. Thank you very much. The press conference is over now.